Hello, and welcome to my new channel, Black is the New Red. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm going to take some time to introduce myself. My name is Rebecca, and for the last, I would say 5 years, I have been on a journey. My journey has been that of an African American woman going from left to right, and also what caused me to leave the Democratic plantation, and why do I feel the need to speak out now? And why do I feel the need to inform those around this country and around the world that yes, indeed, Black is the new red, that we are becoming a part of the red revolution, which is the Republican Party. And why would we do such a thing? Because we're tired. We're tired of being lied to. We're tired of having our ideas and our thoughts ignored by our leaders, our political leaders and the thought leaders in this nation who take our votes for granted. And we're tired of being the oppressed mentally. We're tired of having our thoughts and our actions and our speech being monitored, being persecuted because we want to leave the Democratic plantation. Well, I'll tell you what. There's a lot of us who will speak out and who won't be intimidated and who won't just buckle down and say, hey, I'm not going to say anything because it may offend someone. Well, I'm sorry if my ideas and my thoughts offend you, but I'm going to speak anyway. I'm going to be the voice for African American women and men who don't have a voice or who feel like they can't speak. So, with that being said, I'm going to talk about what led me to the Republican Party and actually, quote unquote, walk away. I want to just applaud the WalkAway. I just want to take a moment to just applaud the WalkAway movement because it takes a lot of courage to walk away from everything that you know, walk away from friends, walk away from family, walk away from a fake ideology. So I just want to take the time right now to say, wow, you are a hero for walking away. And I also want to take the time right now to just appreciate the young Black leaders who met with the president. The president opened up the doors of the White House, and we saw recently where young Black African American men and women from around this country took the opportunity to go and speak to the president, and for him to speak to them, to hear their thoughts and to hear his thoughts and to have a dialogue. And that has never happened before in the history of this nation. And so I thank the thought leaders who did that. Candace Owens for being brave, and Charlie Kirk for being brave, and Kanye for being brave. But guess what? There are millions of us out there who need to take their lead and learn from it and be brave. I'm not only doing this for me, I'm doing this for my children. My children, I have an adult 22-year-old daughter who was one of the first people to say, you know what? You need to give Donald Trump a chance. You need to listen to him. And I said, why would I listen to Donald Trump? And she told me, this was back in the fall of 2016. She said to me, Mom, you need to listen to Donald Trump because he raised his children correctly. They don't drink and they don't smoke. And anyone that can raise kids correctly is someone you need to listen to. And I began to reflect back on my father, who absolutely adored Donald Trump. My dad passed away in 2014. But years prior to that, he told me exactly who Donald Trump was and what he meant to him. You see, my dad was a real estate investor. He was a businessman, but he admired Donald Trump because in the 1940s, my dad was also a caddy when he was a young child in South Florida and golf courses that were in the South Florida area. And he told me that Donald Trump, years later, fought to desegregate the country clubs in the South Florida area or in the whole state. And so my dad admired him for that, and he also admired him for his work ethic and his business savvy. And so when Donald Trump decided to run and all the news media just turned on him because when he was running against other Republicans, he was wonderful. But as soon as he decided to run and actually win the nomination and actually run against the demonic darling child, Hillary Clinton, then he became the devil? Not really. See, we've been deceived. We have been completely deceived by the Democratic plantation owners. And I say, for one, no more. So my channel is going to be dedicated to facts. It's going to be dedicated to reason. It's going to be dedicated to study. It's going to be dedicated to research. It's going to be dedicated to free and open thought. You see, we are living in a society now where your thoughts are basically under fire. There's a war for your thoughts. And we're also living in a society where you're not allowed to think for yourself. So our minds are being chained to a certain way of thinking, and particularly the African American community. Why do we all have to think the same way? Why do we all have to vote the same way? Why do we all have to believe the same political ideologies? Who told us we had to believe that everything the Democratic plantation owners tell us, we have to just toe the line? What does it mean to toe something? If you tow something, that means you put it on your back and you drag it to safety when it's broken down. Well, guess what? The Democratic plantation owners have never towed anything for us. Our communities have been broken down for decades. Have they put our communities on their backs and towed us to safety? Absolutely not. But they do have what's called mental policing of your thoughts. And their thought police, keep you in line. If you dare open up your mouth on Facebook or any type of social media and you begin to speak exactly what's in your heart, the thought police will attack you and beat you verbally back into line, just as the former slave overseers, that if the slaves began to get out of line, they would get beat back into line so they can do exactly what everyone else was doing in the field. And that's the job of mental slave owners, is to keep you in line, and they have the overseers to do the dirty work. How dare you try to leave? How dare you try to have your own thoughts? Well, guess what? No more. I applaud, and I want to be a part of the solution. I want to help. I want to be a part of Blacksit. I want to be a part of Make America Great Again. I want to be a part of it. And I'm going to take this assignment very seriously, because there's so many in our society who don't have enough, they feel like they can't speak up, or they may not have enough courage to do it. So I'm going to do it. But today, keep the video semi-short as a launch, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences and what led me to change, what led me to abandon the Democratic mindset, or the Democrat mindset, and think for myself. I'm a person who grew up in a two-family home. Mom and dad got married, stayed married until my dad's passing in 2014. I grew up with what you would call privileged, in a sense. I went to private schools, and I really never had to want for anything. And I really didn't, quote unquote, see racism until I became an adult and went out into the world and began to work. And I began to see racism, and that it's really something that exists. Well, way back then, I decided that I'm not going to be unsuccessful because of racism. I'm going to be successful in spite of it. So I worked hard and did what I was supposed to do. I went to college. I went to that predominantly historically Black institution of higher learning, Clark Atlanta University. And I graduated, and I went into the business sector and got a job and did everything that you would, quote unquote, do. I got married, had kids. But I was still, politically very detached, very uninformed, and very uninvolved in the political process. It was just something that other people did, but it wasn't anything that I thought about on a day-to-day basis. It wasn't until 2004 that my eyes began to open up, when a casual acquaintance that I had had her, from what we thought at the time, maybe her 10th or 12th abortion. And I began to figure out, what is an abortion? I just began to think about it. Like, I knew it was a termination, but I didn't understand the gravity of what it was. And I began to research it when I found out who Margaret Sanger was, and who Planned Parenthood, who they really were, and what their agenda was, and that 800 African American babies alone die in this country. Last year, 330,000 African American babies were aborted in this nation. And that since 1973, 70 million babies have been aborted, and how that disproportionately affects the African American community. I said to myself, there's something drastically wrong. People just don't know. People have no idea. And so I began to gradually leave the liberal thought that I had. I was pro-choice. I quickly switched to pro-life, and my conservative views began to become birthed then. Fast forward 2015 2016, I heard that Donald Trump was running. I thought he was a joke. I said, there's no way in the world Donald Trump's ever going to win. And I began to follow the campaign, and I watched him mow down every Republican candidate that he ran against. And I said, wow, that's something that is certainly surprising. And as the year 2016 kept moving on, I started to take him more and more seriously. Until one day he came to my city. I was living in Orlando at the time, Orlando, Florida at the time. And I was in the library and I was studying for an exam. And I happened to go on my phone, and there was a message there, Donald Trump is going to be in Orlando, more specifically Sanford, Florida, which was like 30 minutes outside of Orlando. And I said, you know what? I'm going, because I want to be able to see for myself who he was. And I called my sister and I said, hey, if I disappear into thin air, it's because I went to a Trump rally in Sanford, Florida. If you know anything about Sanford, Florida is where Trayvon Martin was killed. So needless to say, I was very nervous because I thought that all Trump supporters were racist and were going to be flying the Dixie flags on their big monster trucks and all kinds of things Confederate. And that's what I was expecting. As I was driving, I kept asking myself, what are you doing? Are you nuts? Why are you going to a Trump rally? You know there's going to be nothing but racist white supremacists there. And you're black and you're by yourself? So I went anyway. I kept driving. And I drove. And as I got closer to the venue, traffic was insane. I mean, it was bumper to bumper for miles. And I said, why isn't the news showing this? I said, this is something I wasn't expecting so many people. And so finally, when I got there, I had to park a mile away. And I'm like, there's so many people here. And when I got out of my car, I met a man. He was a gorgeous looking Caucasian man. And he walked up to me and he said, hey, nice car. And we just struck a conversation as we were walking. And he said, what brings you to a Trump rally? And I said, well, I'm a curious person by nature. And then I started talking to him about how disappointed I was in the Democratic Party and how I was so unfulfilled and how I was searching for something. I was searching for truth. And I wanted to know who Donald Trump was for real. I didn't want the media telling me who he was. I wanted to know for myself. And so I kept walking, and this Asian guy starts walking with us. And I turned to the two of them, and we were all talking about the forgotten man and woman of America. And I said to both of them, I said, you know what? CNN will never show this. CNN will never show how there's an African-American woman, a Caucasian man, and an Asian man walking to a Trump rally. That's like a joke, right? So they both laughed and we walked. And when I got there, I discovered something so amazing. I walked in and I saw thousands of people of every walk, from every walk of life. I saw women for Trump. I saw gays for Trump. I saw blacks for Trump. I saw Hispanic for Trump signs. I saw, just everybody. And everybody was laughing and talking and joking. And you could feel the American energy. And I looked around and I was like, wow, this is what America is. This is what America should be. Everybody coming together. Everybody loving one another. And just people, we didn't know each other, but just the fact that we were all there together, it just was amazing. And so finally Donald Trump got there and he began to speak. And of course he did the whole fake news and everything. He did his whole bit spiel. But after a few minutes, he began to talk about what makes America great. He began to talk about why he wanted to make America great. He began to talk about the things that meant something to me, like unleashing all of the gifts and all of the enormous talent that we have in this nation. And he said, if you give me a chance to be your president, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to unleash the power of the American spirit. And I just felt like I had gone to the best pep rally in the world. I mean, as I walked away, I was like, wow, yes, I can. And I remember that from the Barack Obama campaign. But you know what? No, he didn't. He didn't do anything for us. And so I'm like, yeah, wow, I could start my own business. I can go back to school. I could just do these things. And I remember listening and hearing his voice, the president, or that at that point he was just, the candidate. And I remember him hearing his voice, and I'm walking literally back a mile, and something changed. I walked away with two things that I knew for sure. Number one, Hillary Clinton was never going to beat him because of the massive amounts of people that were there. And number two, he had my vote, because I needed to vote for someone who at least promised to do some things that I wanted done in Washington, D.C. And from that day on, I was able to talk to my siblings, and they changed their minds about Donald Trump. We have visited Washington. We have prayed for the president. We've gone different places, New York, and we've prayed. But for the most part, this channel is dedicated to others who want change, who want to leave the Democratic Party, and who want to be a part of what's happening now. There is the WalkAway campaign. There is Blexit. There is so many other organizations that are welcoming ex-Democrats and people who are independent and people who are disenfranchised with what is going on in America. And I'm an American citizen. I was born and raised here. I'm proud to be an American. And yes, Black is the new red. Stay tuned for more videos.